So I got the new unique for Necromancer, the Lidless Wall, and then we started messing around with it and ended up coming up with like a pretty tanky build for my Necromancer. I'm playing hardcore, so I just wanted to survive and I wanted to share it with you guys. This is a little bit of a weird build. The only purpose of this build is to keep me alive. If you've seen my other clips, I've died 3 times on hardcore. This is my 4th attempt to lit level 100 doing the hardcore as well as solo. I'm not playing with anybody. I'm just trying to play the game myself, and I'm not really min-maxing too much, but now I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to get some good items, and I'm starting to really enjoy these items. And I also picked up a new unique today that I wanted to test out, the Lidless Wall, which is one of the new uniques in the game. Now, this one creates a bone storm and creates multiple bone storms, basically, when you're damaging somebody. And I got a perfect roll of a 25% chance to spawn another bone storm at the location of the person I'm damaging, which is a high roll. It was an Halo 2 power item. I was feeling pretty good when I got this. And so I thought, let me try going into Bone Storm and actually seeing how much damage reduction I can get. I also took the barrier aspect that gives me barrier of my base life when I'm damaging people with Bone Storm, and I also increased the length of the Bone Storm by consuming it. So I'm taking everything I can basically to get as tanky as possible. Now, I also have learned my lesson from dying to shivering that when I'm injured, I'm unstoppable this time with these types of boots. And you're going to notice 4 or 5 generation essence cost reduction. But then look at these pants here. Damaging an elite gives me a barrier. Not very great. This would probably be basic attack, gives me more damage reduction. To be honest with you, I'll be changing this one. But look at the stats on it. Triple damage reduction with total armor. And close, flat damage reduction, fortified. Look at the necklace, same thing. Triple damage reduction, fortified, close, as well as flat. And then total armor with a max roll and total armor. So I have some pretty tanky stats. Also, because Lidless is a shield that counts as armor, therefore I can do damage reduction while fortified on that. I'm running damage reduction while fortified on the chest plate with maximum life, damage reduction from distant, damage reduction from fortified, and then fire resistance, which is, an unlucky roll, but it is what it is. The helmet is terrible. It's going to be replaced, but this is just because it has total armor on it, maximum essence on it, physical damage on it, which blood does count as physical damage, and I'm running the Blood Lance build. So if you want to actually see, let me show you the last one here, which is I'm using the Lucky Hit, which has a chance to freeze enemies. This is, again, I want the critical strike chance as well as the chance to restore primary resource. Between that, as well as the primary resource here with the Lidless Wall, I actually don't need the aspect of exposed flesh, which normally is where I get my essence. I don't need it right now, because I have the essence generation from these lucky hits, essentially, okay? And then you don't need these gloves. I would rather have different gloves, but because it has the freeze on it, it has critical strike chance, the lucky hit, it just happens to be the only pair of gloves I have that have any good secondary stats at all. I've been very unlucky with my gloves, or else these would be replaced. And then, of course, I'm using Gore Quills, which is the new seasonal aspect with Blood Lance. Now, I'm using Blood Lance because I actually think Blood Lance is pretty good. I'm pairing it with the Barber Heart, which is disgusting damage. I'm using the Vicious Heart that gives me more critical strike damage, so obviously that pairs with Barber works off of crits. So we have these big bursts of AoE damage, because Blood Lance isn't really like a massive AoE thing. It single targets a bunch of people at the same time, which is sort of pseudo AoE, but it's not like true AoE. So Barber kind of gets around that issue by allowing me to have AoE in the build while also having good single target damage. And then I'm using the Vicious Heart to automatically create or cast the Corpse Explosion, mostly for Tendros in order to get the vulnerability, but also because we are using the Paragon board that will give us bonus damage from consuming 5 corpses in a row. So this is one way of proccing that as well, and that's kind of my combination when it comes to hearts. Nothing too different in terms of skills. I could probably swap to Reap just for the damage reduction, but I'm using the Blood Orb essential, hemorrhage here just because it has a chance to form Blood Orb because it pairs with Blood Lance. But again, like I say, Reap would probably be better. And then I'm using the Guarantee with the Blood Orb, a Lance-based build. Everything that basically gives me damage here. You can kind of see Blood Mist leaving behind a corpse, Corpse Explosion just for the reasons I've stated. And then, of course, we're getting the bonus damage from consuming corpses. I'm actually not running curses at all. I'm not using the auto decrepify or anything, which would give us cooldown reduction for the Bone Storm, but we don't need it because we can keep Bone Storm up basically the entirety of the time as long as we have corpses to consume, because we are using this ring right here that consumes corpses to increase its duration. And then as we go down here, I'm just taking anything that gives me damage reduction. So Death's Embrace is going to give me damage reduction. All the way down here, Standalone gives me damage reduction. And then obviously the Bone Storm itself gives damage reduction as well as critical strike chance, which again pairs with the critical strike types of hearts we have, as well as the damage reduction. And then we're doing the Guaranteed Overpower maxing out all of the things to really increase our blood. Obviously, we're not going to try to heal our minions because we don't have any. So we're doing that vulnerability from the Tindros, 4 to 5 from the corpse formation. And that's a pretty standard Bloodlands type of build paired with the Lidless Wall. So this is post-nerf stats. We're talking damage reduction, 4-5, 34.5. Damage from distance, 19.5. From close, 23.5. All damage reduction, 16.7. And then we got about 5,000 life. Again, we're only level 74. But this is where I'm at currently on my hardcore, and it's working pretty well for me. Let me show you some gameplay footage of it. Yeah, I feel like this build is just going to keep us from dying. Like, we have so much tankiness. We got the Lidless Wall making the Bone Storms. We have the Bone Storm Barrier, which is constantly stacking a lot of barrier. We've got damage reduction and max life on like most things. We have total armor on both the necklace as well as our pants, giving us a bunch of total armor. With 3 damage reduction on the amulet with total armor, 3 damage reduction on the pants with total armor. It's a pretty tanky build. We're kind of doing the one last time that was kicking our ass right before we swapped some stuff. And we're doing perfectly fine. The only thing we don't have for damage reduction is we don't have damage reduction on the boots. That would give us damage reduction while injured. We could always reroll for those if we really wanted to min-max. But we have Corpse Tindros, which I'm okay with as well. And then we have Fortified Generation there. Movement speed and essence cost reduction. I feel pretty tanky. We also have the damage because we're using Barber Heart, which is giving us the AoE. The auto corpse cast pulls everybody in and makes them vulnerable, which gives us essence because of the exposed flesh when they're vulnerable. So we have the essence covered. This build feels pretty good, man. The Barber Heart does the AoE. We have more damage reduction from the Brutal Heart here. When you use defensive subterfuge or Macrab skill or whatever the fuck it's called, all the suppressed damage blows up. Which we don't really need it for the damage, but we do need it for the damage reduction. So I feel like we're just kind of tanking everything, just chewing through all the enemies. We have all the damage reduction stuff that we can really take here. We have damage reduction here, standalone. We've got damage reduction there. A lot of damage reduction. We don't have a full Paragon board yet, but the one that we're working on currently is we have Undaunted. Where is it? The Undaunted that gives us more damage reduction. While Fortified, which we basically always have, is we have a lot of Fortified generation for the blood. So it's I don't know. I really like the build. Like for hardcore, it's feeling great. I feel a lot safer than I was before, which makes me a lot more relaxed and feeling good on the grind. We have plenty of AoE damage, plenty of single target damage. We can basically build tanky and increase our damage. We don't need overwhelming damage numbers. Yeah, because this feels pretty good. When you have this type of VIM where there's stuff all over the place. Like, we're just constantly pulling them in. We have plenty of AoE.
I need more time.
That's satisfying gameplay. Kind of wish Corpse Explosion, like my Corpse Explosion, was a little bit better. I should build around it a little bit more, maybe. I know I'm using Frostborn, and I could use, like, Howl from Below or something instead, but... it's the one thing that comes to mind with this build. It's like, well, my Corpse Explosion's not really that good.
I'm not ready yet.
But I like the Lidless plus the Bone Storm just to keep up the barrier. It's the amount of barrier that we have. It's kind of always capped, which is nice. Okay, here we go.
I'm not ready yet. burden is too great.
Nice. GG.